Welcome everybody to another episode of Fins Nation. I'm your host Louis Sung, and today we're going to be talking about a very sensitive topic. It's a topic that when I say it, I sincerely hope you will stick around to hear what I have to say about this, because it is something that even I myself did not ever expect myself to say. But thanks to the power of OnlyFins, which by the way is again only $3 a month, and the link to the Discord server is in the description below, and you should definitely join if you have not yet, there has been discussion, and at first, I didn't even think about it. I dismissed it as complete and utter nonsense. However, because I am somebody who always tries to give the benefit of the doubt, somebody who always tries to keep an open mind about these things, I decided to go ahead and look into it. So the question that I am now going to pose and attempt to answer is simply this. Is there hope for Austin Jackson? Now, before everybody clicks off this video, I hope you'll listen to what I have to say, because even I did not ever think that I would find myself thinking in these terms. I am not going to ever sit here and say that I think Austin Jackson could be a superstar player one day. However, after being pointed out by some folks on OnlyFins, just what Austin Jackson looked like in the very first week of the season against the New England Patriots, again, I summarily dismissed this at first. I didn't even bother to go back and look because I know it's Austin Jackson. What possible potential could there be? But again, I'm somebody who always tries to keep an open mind. So I went back and I looked, and I'm going to go ahead and explain what it is I saw. But before we get too far into it, just want to go ahead and mention that, as always, this show is brought to you by PrizePicks.com. PrizePicks.com is the revolutionary fantasy platform where you can now pick up to 6 different players across professional sports leagues. Whether that's the NFL, the NBA, the MLB, one of each, it's up to you to decide. Just choose the over or the under on those individual players' fantasy projections, whether that's individual stats or the classic fantasy point projections. They give you free squares, special Taco Tuesday promos, Flex Friday specials where you can get your money back if you lose, or you can multiply the amount of money you can win. So with offers like that, it's hard to justify not signing up. So use the promo code FIVE, that's FIVE, and they will match up to $100 on your initial deposit when you sign up. Again, that's promo code FIVE, spell that out, FIVE. Go to prizepicks.com and get started with your winning today. And if you are a South Florida resident and you're looking to protect your home or business with impact-rated windows and doors, make sure you contact All Pro Construction Builders. They specialize in impact window and door installation for residential and commercial properties. All Pro Construction Builders is a state-certified and insured general contractor, and they service Miami-Dade, Monroe, Broward County. Basically, if you live in South Florida, they've got your back. They only use top-quality products that are locally made, and they are a family-owned and operated business where you will only deal with the owner from start to finish. They offer competitive and affordable pricing as well as 100% financing with no upfront cost or down payment. So if you're looking for a trustworthy and reliable contractor who offers quality service, make sure to contact All Pro Construction Builders. They will provide you with a free estimate and help you protect your home in less than 8 weeks. Call Danny at 305-484-4429 and make sure to mention 5 Reasons Sports to get a 10% discount. Again, that is Danny at 305-484-4429. Go ahead and give him a call and mention 5 Reasons Sports to get a 10% discount, get your free estimate, and get started protecting your home in less than 8 weeks. Again, that's All Pro Construction Builders. So now you're probably asking the question, what could have possibly possessed me to even suggest that there was any hope for Austin Jackson at this point? We've all seen what he is capable of, for better or worse. And yet, again, the reason you go to OnlyFins is not so that you can just avoid the toxicity of Twitter. That's part of it, don't get me wrong. But most of the folks in there have a real head sense for what football is all about. And somebody had to be curious enough to actually go back and watch Austin Jackson to be able to come to this conclusion. And in doing so, they triggered a spark of curiosity in me. Because Austin Jackson only played in 2 games last season. And both times, he went out injured with an ankle injury. So what exactly happened? Well, I went ahead and I looked at the very first game, week 1 of the NFL season, where the Miami Dolphins opened up against the New England Patriots. He played a total of 14 snaps on offense. He played 1 on special teams, but that doesn't really, that's special teams. It doesn't really matter that much. 14 snaps on offense before he went out with his injury. And he then proceeded to not play at all for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 consecutive games before coming back in week 12 against the Houston Texans, and things just went downhill from there. But the implication of going downhill was that there was somewhere down for him to start from in the first place. And so I thought to myself, there's no way that's true. He was bad from beginning to end, right? Well, apparently not. In those 14 snaps against the New England Patriots, Austin Jackson looked competent. And while I do not consider myself a film expert by any means, if I focus in on one player and I just go back and watch the film over and over again, I can see obvious things like if mistakes were made, if somebody goes off balance, if he looks like he's ready to fall over, I can tell that. And not a single time that I can see. You can maybe argue Austin Jackson made maybe one mistake against the New England Patriots. And really, that mistake also had Robert Hunt make a mistake as well, because that was the play where Connor Williams had to leap on a fumble because Tua ended up getting surrounded in the pocket. Austin Jackson did not catch the guy, but it was really Robert Hunt who missed and whiffed on his block first. And thank goodness Connor Williams is proving to be such a dramatic player because he's awesome. And he was able to make up for that play. Nevertheless, those 14 plays on offense, Austin Jackson was holding his own. He even opened up a nice hole for Chase Edmonds to run through. That's not a play that you normally associate with Austin Jackson. That's something you associate with Teron Armstead. That's something you associate with Connor Williams. That's something you even associate with Robert Hunt. Austin Jackson? Never. You immediately assume it had to be something else. Somebody must have tripped and fallen over, making Austin Jackson's job very easy. No, that's not what happened. Those 14 plays against the New England Patriots. Maybe you can argue the Patriots defense wasn't that great that day. Maybe you can argue that he wasn't going against very high-level talent. Whatever you want to discuss. Austin Jackson looked good against the Patriots before his ankle got rolled up on. And then for the next 9 weeks, he proceeded to be MIA. He just wasn't there. So again, Baltimore did not play. Buffalo did not play. Cincinnati did not play. The Jets did not play. Minnesota, Pittsburgh, Detroit. He was inactive altogether for the Bears. And then Cleveland, he did not play. Again, week 12 is when he finally came back against the Houston Texans. And against the Houston Texans, that player that I saw against the New England Patriots had disappeared entirely. What I was all of a sudden seeing was not the same Austin Jackson that I saw in those 14 plays against the Patriots, because that Austin Jackson looked fundamentally sound. He looked like he was on balance. He was able to make plays. He was able to open up holes. It looked like a completely different player. I went back and I watched both games that he played. Against the Patriots, he looked good. Against the Texans, oh my God. Austin Jackson was flat-footed. He was slow. He was off balance, easily pushed off his stance. It was like night and day of a difference. And it got me to thinking, was this just because Austin Jackson had gotten injured? Is this just the remnants of the fact that he was not able to actually play because he was not healthy? If I recall correctly, the first time Austin Jackson got injured, he did return and he also had struggles, which made me believe that perhaps he just still wasn't healthy. And if that is the case, then is it only injury history that's the problem? Is it just because he's injured that he's not playing well? Because Greg Little, for a little while, looked pretty good at right tackle. And then after he got hurt, he fell off a cliff. And we just assumed that, oh, well, Greg Little must not be healthy. That's what's going on. So we go to Brandon Shell, and that kind of fixes the problem for a little while. Now, I personally feel like there's more to it than that with Austin Jackson than just, oh, he was not healthy. Obviously, that makes a big difference. Again, Cedric Wilson is an excellent example. He broke his ribs, Trent Sherfield stepped up, and even after Cedric Wilson came back, Sherfield kept his spot. So I don't want to think that it was just the injury that happened with Cedric Wilson. I think there were more factors to it, such as you don't mess with a good thing, and Trent Sherfield was performing well, so why are you going to uproot him to put back a more expensive player just for the sake of more expensive? I don't like playing that game. That's the same reason I was ready to move on from Austin Jackson and Noah Igbenogany a long time ago. Just because you invested first-round draft picks into them does not mean you are obligated to make sure that they play no matter what. Now, with Noah Igbenogany, I have seen no redeeming factors. He made one really good play against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and it happened to be the game-winning play. That will probably be the highlight of his career, and that is the one play that he will tell his kids about one day to say, your dad won an NFL football game for his team. Congratulations to him. He has that one moment, and he'll have, if he's smart with his investment, he'll be able to live off of the money that he's made in the NFL for a pretty good long time. Now, here's where things differ, though, with Austin Jackson. And this is the part that makes me wonder if there is hope for him. And I suppose by default, you could also say that there's maybe hope for Liam Eichenberg as well. But here's the biggest issue with the Miami Dolphins and the offensive line, okay? And it's not even just the talent level. Because I decided to look things up just as a little bit of a reminder of what the situation is. Austin Jackson was drafted back in 2020. But even before that, we've all known that the Miami Dolphins offensive line has been in major flux. And there's probably a reason for that. Because if you look back at the Miami Dolphins' history at the offensive line, look at how many times there's been a coaching staff change. Look at how many times the offensive line coach. I feel like there's been more offensive line coaches in Miami than any other unit in the entire NFL. Because if you look at it, ever since 2018, the Miami Dolphins have not had a single person to run the show in consecutive seasons. In 2014 and 2015, it was John Benton, and he actually came with some serious clout. He was somebody that everybody thought was going to be a fantastic offensive line coach. After 2015, he gets fired in favor of Chris Forster. And we all know the story with Chris Forster, obviously the infamous video of him doing drugs. After the firing of Chris Forster, Jeremiah Washburn walked in to become the offensive line coach for the Dolphins. Okay, and he lasted for one season. He was in 2018. That was it. Then in 2019, Pat Flaherty became the offensive line coach. And 4 days into training camp, he was fired by Brian Flores and replaced by Dave DeGuglielmo, which, by the way, that was actually his second stint as the Miami Dolphins offensive line coach, as he was the offensive line coach for the Dolphins back in 2009 to 2011. So he was actually one of the longest tenured offensive line coaches, and he actually came back a second time after Flaherty was fired. But he didn't last long, because in 2020, Brian Flores brought in Steve Marshall to be the offensive line coach. Now, that was the season that the Miami Dolphins went 10-6 with Brian Flores, and I don't know what happened to Steve Marshall after that season was over. He didn't come back to Miami, because in 2021, instead of hiring a brand new body, Brian Flores opted to promote Lemuel Jean-Pierre, who was the assistant offensive line coach for the Dolphins, and decided to make him the guy in 2021. And that was, infamously, one of the worst offensive lines in NFL history by all available metrics. Lemuel Jean-Pierre was literally asked a question during a press conference, and everybody who heard about it remembers this. And he was asked how the coaching helps to improve the players. And he did not have an answer for that question. It's bad enough that you're apparently unqualified for the job, because if you can't even come up with even a cookie cutter answer to explain why what you're doing to help to coach up these guys is supposed to be helping them improve, it's obviously not helping them improve, because, again, all they have done is regress ever since you took over. And now you don't even have an answer to give on how your coaching style is helping these guys improve. I've heard of people being bad in front of a camera or a microphone, but that just looked awful. And you could tell, because instead of making a big fuss about it after Mike McDaniel came in and said, I'm going to hire Matt Applebaum instead, Lemuel Jean-Pierre just stood back and said, okay. And he went back to be the assistant offensive line coach. He didn't even go to look for another place to go. Or if he did, nobody else was apparently interested, because he decided to come back to Miami. Maybe he felt like he had more to learn. If that's the case, kudos. Listen, I understand. I am somebody who's willing to learn from anybody if they have something to teach me. And I don't care if they happen to be better than me at something. If you can teach me and you're willing to teach me, I will happily learn from you. And maybe that's what the case was with Lemuel Jean-Pierre. But it was clearly painfully obvious he was not ready for the job. Now here comes Matt Applebaum, and here we go again, a brand new offensive line coach, and supposedly somebody who has a decent pedigree, worked at Boston College, knows McDaniel pretty well. Here he comes, and offensive coordinator Frank Smith has to do most of the job. Are you serious? The Miami Dolphins' luck with offensive line coaches has been so utterly pathetic that it's hard to justify any player developing at this point. Like, forget Austin Jackson for a second. You have Liam Eichenberg, Michael Dieter. Any young offensive lineman that comes into Miami is basically doomed to fail unless you are too good to fail, e.g. Laramie Tunsil. You were just that great that the offensive line and the coaching did not have the chance to ruin you. You were just that special. And the only reason I don't think it was worse is because Teron Armstead is a coach on the field. He has his own offensive line teaching clinic. Teron Armstead knows what he's doing. And it's a good thing because apparently Matt Applebaum wasn't doing the job well enough and Frank Smith had to invest so much time into the offensive line. Now here comes Butch Berry. We don't know a lot about Butch Berry other than that he's a very old school, hard-nosed, he's going to get in your face type of offensive line coach. He used to work at so maybe ask some of your Hurricane buddies what they know about him. All we really know about him is that apparently he leaves nasty sticky notes in the lockers of players if he feels like they're not doing a good job. So he's not a player's coach by any stretch of the imagination. I don't know if maybe that's what ultimately wakes up some of these players. Maybe Robert Jones responds to Butch Berry's hard-nosed style. Maybe Austin Jackson finally snaps out of his funk and gets back to fundamentals, because that seems to be the biggest thing. If you leave Austin Jackson alone for too long, it's almost as if he forgets the basics. Because he was really good in week 1 of the NFL season in 2022. He was good. And then he got hurt. And then you left him alone for a long time. He came back from injury. And he looked awful. He hadn't been practicing very long. Had he forgotten all of his coaching? Maybe he's just a player that needs constant attention. That's not exactly the greatest investment. But if you're trying to make a Super Bowl run and you know that he can be good if you just invest a lot of time in him, well, maybe that's the reason why Chris Grier hasn't emphasize getting a right tackle yet. Maybe he's not desperate to find somebody because Mike McDaniel has explained to him, listen, I saw what this kid did in week 1. He can play. He just needs to be coached. And that's been the biggest problem with the Dolphins. Who is the coach? Who is the offensive line coach? It's been a brand new one every year for the past 5 years. That's unacceptable. It's really unacceptable. Like, how many teams do you know that go through a new offensive line coach every year for 5 years? Maybe Butch Berry is finally the answer. I have no idea what kind of a person Butch Berry is off the field. All I know is what he is on the field. And what he is on the field is somebody who will get in your face and he will not hesitate to say something rude just to get your attention. The sticky notes, the clips of him on the field screaming at people, cursing at them. Mike McDaniel's a nice guy. Maybe you need somebody who's not such a nice guy to balance things out. Maybe that's what finally gets these guys up and running. Veteran players don't seem to have an issue with him. It's most of the younger guys that don't respond to him well. Is that just a generation gap? Is there something more to it than that? We're going to find out one way or another. But here we are. Yet another first-time offensive line coach for the Miami Dolphins. And when I say first time, I don't mean the first time he's been an offensive line coach, just that this is the first stint he's had with Miami. Because here we go again. Another new face. Is this going to be the one that solves it? Is this the one that gives us hope in Austin Jackson again? But that's kind of why I have hope now. Because after watching what he did against the Patriots and seeing that his injury and possibly his lack of practice had a direct correlation to the fact that he had such a fall off, because you don't start 1 week doing really good and then the next week you look god awful. And there were a lot of weeks in between those two. Maybe he just needs to be coached. Maybe that's what he needs. Maybe that's what Liam Eichenberg needs. Because so far, just like when you have a bazillion offensive coordinators and it messes with a quarterback when you have to learn a new offense every day, it can work the same way with offensive linemen. You have a new offensive line coach every single year, you basically have to start from scratch every single time. Maybe Austin Jackson is not as fundamentally gifted as someone like Teron Armstead or Connor Williams or even Robert Hunt. They don't really need to be taught the basics over and over again. Maybe Austin Jackson, again, his athletic ability was the one thing that was touted when he was drafted in the first round. He has a lot of raw potential, but he needed coaching. And you could argue that that's the one thing he hasn't really been able to get much of. So maybe now he'll finally get it. I'm not saying he's the answer. I'm far from it, believe me. I'm still on the Kendall Lamb train as of right now until further notice. But maybe Austin Jackson, maybe that's why Chris Grier isn't in a hurry, because Mike McDaniel has told him, listen, there's potential with this kid. Don't give up on him yet. We're going to go ahead and call it here. I want to thank everybody for listening. If you haven't gone to prizepicks.com yet, make sure you do so. Use the promo code 5, that's F-I-V-E, and they will match up to $100 on your initial deposit when you sign up using that promo code. Flex Friday is right around the corner. You should make sure that you're keeping an eye on the Prize Picks app so that you can take advantage and try to see if you can get your money back if you lose, or you can even multiply the amount of money you could normally win. If you're really good at picking the overs or the unders on their individual player fantasy projections, make sure that you do that, because you're going to win some big time cash. So again, use the promo code 5 on prizepicks.com and go ahead and get your $100 matched by PrizePicks and start winning on their dime at first instead. And if you want to make sure your residential and commercial properties are protected with impact window and door installations, make sure that you contact All Pro Construction Builders. They only use top quality products that are locally made. They're family owned and operated. You only deal with the owner from start to finish. Call Danny at 305-484-4429 and make sure to mention 5 Reasons Sports to get a 10% discount on your free estimate and help to protect your home in less than 8 weeks with impact rated windows and doors from All Pro Construction Builders. Proud sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. We will see you all next week because I'm sure there's going to be more to talk about.